You're live.
All right, my name is Dr. Alfonso Evans Sr., and I'm excited to talk about taking the risk, meet your father. We are excited to bring you panel discussions. We have some awesome panelists that we are extremely excited about, and we want you to stay tuned and remember to look for the upcoming book, Taking the Risk, Meet Your Father. Good evening, everyone. We do apologize this particular evening. I am your host, Dr. Alfonso Evans Sr. We apologize for the delay. We had a couple technical difficulties, but we are here for you, and we thank you for the wait on this particular evening. This evening, our other participants will be coming in, but we wanted to get started and move forward. Today, we have an extremely exciting topic. You know, as we talk about the book, Taking the Risk, Meet Your Father, that will be coming up very soon in 2021, we did not take the opportunity to forget the role that women play in the relationships of fathers and sons. It is crucial that we talk about this topic. And we know this is probably going to be a two-part series, but tonight we are more than excited to discuss this because so many women on a consistent basis participate in the relationships that fathers have with their sons and vice versa. So let's have our introductions this particular evening so we can get right into it. And again, we thank you for your patience with us on this evening as we continue with our panel discussions, our monthly Taking the Risk, Meet Your Father. And as we talk about these crucial topic areas, I want to thank you again for tuning in with us this evening. So we're going to start with our introduction of our awesome panelists this evening. We have some book contributors. We have the awesome Bishop Evans, and we have our own Bishop Anthony, who is going to bring another perspective to this conversation on this evening. And we have you, our audience out there. So we're going to get started with Mr. Ruth. We're going to ask him to introduce himself briefly so that we can go through our panelists and get started.
Yes, how y'all doing? Good evening. My name is Benny Ruth. I'm one of the book contributors. I'm also, I guess my passion is mentoring, and I focus on really, diving in and dealing with young men and their struggles, just daily lives, as well as I'm in a PhD program, and I'm focusing on just that, mentoring and making that part of curriculums, and bringing parents together and bringing men to meet their fathers. So thank you for letting me be.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deary.
Good evening. My name is Brian Deary. I'm also a book contributor. I'm a third grade educator in Philadelphia, and that pretty much sums it up about me.
All right. Bishop Anthony.
Praise the Lord. My name is Bishop Anthony. I am from the Heart of God Family Worship Center, where we do life here in the great city of Pottstown, Pennsylvania. I am the second in command under Bishop David G. Evans and the Abundant Harvest Fellowship of Churches.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to allow him to give us one anyway, because we love to start off with hearing a little bit about Bishop Evans.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. Looking forward to an incredible conversation. If you have not been able to join us over the last few months, it will be worth your while to go back to those conversations once we finish this one and kind of see what we've been talking about. It's really been making a difference in the lives of those that have been involved. And we want to thank the ladies, as always, for being the lion's share of these conversations over the last few months and how they've contributed. So I'm just excited to see how the conversation is going to round out tonight as we talk about something I went through, which was my mom having to be both mom and dad, and how she was able to accomplish that.
Absolutely. One of the things when I was embarking on writing Taking the Risk, Meet Your Father, and also bringing contributors in that wrote their own chapter, is I got to a point of the book where I said, we cannot complete this book without having the stories from the women that were in our lives. It just cannot be completed without that. And so while we were focusing on fathers and sons, we had to talk about those grandmothers and those mothers and those aunts and those sisters that played a critical part in the understanding of what it meant to have a father-son relationship and the lack thereof. And so we want to start off this evening by just asking each panelist to talk a little bit about briefly your mother's role or that aunt's role or your sister's role in your particular story. And for me, it was my grandmother, it was my aunts, it was my mother, who played a critical role in the absence of my father. And many of you know my father is still absent and I'm still on the search for him. But I could not tell my story without bringing them in the story because it's so critical. And so we're going to start off by just engaging ourselves to talk a little bit about our own personal stories and how those women affected those relationships that we had with our fathers and lack thereof. And then we're going to dig a little deeper with our questions. So we're going to start off with Bishop Anthony. Can you give us a little bit of information around how women played a crucial part in the relationship that you had or did not have with your father?
Well, what's really amazing for me is that I had a relationship with my father for the first 5-6 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And what disconnected us was $25 a week child support. That's what separated us. That's what kept him from spending time with me. And my mother, I often tell people that my mother is the greatest man I ever met because she was. I mean, she really was. Because this woman, she's a single mother. Keep in mind, she's a single mother. And the one thing I've always seen about my mom is that she always strived for better. She always strived for better. She always wanted to make sure that she wanted to make sure that we always lived in a decent neighborhood, a nice house. And she did all that, working back then. It was First Pennsylvania Bank. Bishop Evans would probably know about that. He's of that age. First Pennsylvania. First Pennsylvania Bank, but then also working second jobs, cleaning offices. I learned my work ethic through my mother. I had to go to work with her. Had to do everything with her. Wherever she went, I had to go. And then there were times back then when you could stay home by yourself, and she would call, and you had 2 rings. And then it would stop. And the next ring, you better answer. That's what needed to happen. But without my mother, I probably wouldn't be the individual I am today. I got my work ethic from her. I got my strength from her. Sure enough, got my diligence from her because she was the most determined person I've ever met, and she still is at 81 years old.
Remarkable story. Remarkable, Mr. Ruth.
Oh, definitely. There are 3 amazing women that contributed to my life. Definitely my mother, she raised me as a single parent, my sister and I. But I would have to, my grandmother was that she was a rock as well. She was the one who gave us all the little sayings, the advice, when the fly lands on you, he's still working. And at 7, I'm like, what are you talking about? But as I grew and understood what she was saying, you're always working. Even at play, you're working. If you're playing basketball, you're working to get the shot. You're working to be better. My mother was the one who made sure you understood that education, money, all of those things were very important. How to manage money, how to manage your time, how to move and really make sure that you are focused on Christ and making sure that you understand whom you belong to. And then I have to throw my sister in there because she just kept me. She managed it. She's like, listen, you don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
She was my savior sometimes when I was about to get out of pocket. She would catch me at the right time. So I definitely give all praises to my mom, and I thank God for my grandmother and my sister as well. So those 3 women were very powerful in my life growing up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Derry.
I would like to piggyback off of the first 2 gentlemen. Same as though my mother was a pivotal dynamic in my life. My father transitioned when I was 14 years old, and my mom was a pillar of my life. prior to his death, but even after his transition. Another pivotal role for me that stands out for my mother is I never heard my mother talk bad about my father, and that played dividend. That allowed my father to be a hero in my eyes. I was able to champion him and be proud of the man who he was, whether he was maybe right or wrong or different. I wouldn't know because my mom never shared that kind of information with me. So all praises to my mom.
Okay. Bishop Evans?
Yeah, my story is similar to all of the gentlemen. I think my mother and my father separated when I was in third or fourth grade, and she had to take over both roles, and she was absolutely committed to her boys until she passed. So I didn't know any other work ethic. I didn't know any other model for caring for others. I didn't know any other model for recovering from hard times, and add her to my grandmother. Then my mother died, my grandmother died, my aunt, my mother's sister, took over. So my 88-year-old aunt is now the person, and all of them modeled the same thing. God first, work hard, be successful, take care of your family. They all modeled the same thing. So, and then with my mom, since she was an athlete, when dad wasn't around, so she taught me how to catch, taught me how to hit, taught me how to play ball, taught me how to fight because she fought like a guy. She just, she can hold her hands, as we used to say back in the day. That might be a little ahead of your time, Anthony. She could hold her hands, and she taught us all those things, all the things that you would expect a man to teach you. She taught, and those things she couldn't. Her father, my grandfather, stepped in and taught us those things. But I wouldn't be who I am today without her.
And so as we listen to those different roles that women played in the dynamics, we heard about the fact of someone's father's passing, and the fact that child support brought difficulty, and the fact that there was a divorce. Our first question tonight that we're really going to dig deep into, there are a lot of women out there who are having a lot of difficulty with trying to raise their sons, trying to have any type of relationship they can with the son's father to keep that merged. There's some women out there who are extremely hurt and, maybe are not bringing that together. We heard Mr. Derry talk about his mother never said anything negative about his father to him. And she might have said something, but she didn't say it to him. And so our first question is, as we look forward to that, how do we address the women that are out there today that are listening to this? And we know that they're out there and they're going to bring some questions in, but how do we as panelists speak to them around the difficulty that they're having bridging a gap with their son and father, knowing that they have a negative relationship with that man? What advice can we give? Because I'm sure everyone on this panel has seen some not so nice things between their mother or women that were in roles of raising them with their fathers. And so what are some of the things that we believe that we can give to them to kind of bring them to some type of acknowledgement of how to focus on the child's benefit and not necessarily what they're feeling at that moment about that particular man? Any panelists at this time?
I can jump in. One of the main things I will tell any young lady or any woman who has a child, and I probably said this to some of my mentees' mothers, is take yourself out of the equation for a moment. Pause for a second and look at what your son's needs are when it comes to the father, and also, ask certain questions. You have to have a courageous conversation first with yourself, as a mother, as a parent. Those questions about should he, could he, would he, what are those dynamics? But take the personal relationship as far as what happened between you and him out of the equation. Is it safe for my son to meet his father? Is it the right thing to do? And if those answers are yes, when you take yourself out of it as far as that personal, then you have to start a discussion with not only your son, start a discussion with the father as well. Not telling him what to say or what to do, but definitely telling, letting him know where that child is right now, so he can come there with a better exam, a better playbook on how he's going to relate to his child. I always go back to what Pastor Evans says, and I've been championing this phrase: is command, conversation.
Yes, sir.
Command, conversation, and concern.
Yes, sir.
I've been saying that to people almost every day. How you raise a child, and I was like, "Ooh, I wish I had that." And even now, when I talk to my girls, I'm just so motivated on having a conversation as well as with concern, with a 30-year-old daughter, dealing with concern, but still having those conversations, but knowing I cannot raise them at this point with command. But you have to be able, that young lady, that mother has to say, let me take my personal feelings out, not about him, but have my personal feelings about my child so I can maneuver and manage this for his betterment and for the betterment of the relationship.
Absolutely. And, I'm getting people stopping me everywhere that I go. And people that I didn't even think that were tuning in saying that these panel discussions have been excellent because I'm struggling with the fact that my son does not have his father. He lives down the street. He lives around the corner. We know where he is. He only comes around, during these particular times. So how do we, again, as we continue to frame this question, what advice can we give to these women who have young sons, grown sons, etc.? Bishop Anthony?
Well, my dynamic was different, of course. I would say, well, listen to this. My mother did everything she could to help me connect with my father. He was rejecting the fellowship with me. I'm using spiritual words now because
yes. I like that.
I had to, I brought it in a little bit. But watch this. There's one thing. There are two things. One is be as consistent as possible and make every effort to make the connection, because after a while, the child is going to recognize that mom is doing all she can do to make this connection with my father. The other thing is, I never heard my mother say anything negative about my father, even though he was an alcoholic. And even though I knew, I came from a very hostile environment. My mother and father he was an alcoholic. And he used to beat my mother up. Countless times we were at Lincoln Hall Hospital with black eyes and all kinds of stuff. But my mom was very brave. She would fight back. So I saw all this confrontation. I knew all this was going on, but I still had a desire to be with my father, but he did not have a desire to be with me. But the one thing my mother never did, even in the midst of all that, she never said anything negative about him. She made every effort for me to be a part of his life. She made every effort for me to be a part of whatever it was that he said he was going to do. All the times that he said, I'm going to be here, such and such, he would never show up. So I would say to the women that are dealing with the father that doesn't want to really be involved, it's not going to be your job to say something negative about him. It'll be your job to try to make the connection. Allow time to be able to reveal the circumstance. All right, because here's what's going to happen. After a while, a child is going to grow up and recognize you just weren't there. You know what I mean? But what you don't want to happen, you don't want to be the woman that talks negative about this child's father, seeing that they still want to love him. Because every child wants to be with their father. You can't allow you to be the one that's making the negative connection or saying the negative things around them or putting these negative impressions in their mind. So be as consistent as possible. Be as consistent as possible. Don't bring, I would say, if you're dating, don't bring men into your home. You have to wait a while for that until you're sure you're getting ready to move on to another stage. I never saw my mother bring men over the house. She went on dates, I'm sure, but I didn't meet them. There are no Uncle So-and-sos and all that other kind of stuff. None of that. Y'all know what I'm
That's
talking
right.
about.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
And my mother was real about that, because now my mother went on dates. I know she did, but I never met them. I never met them. I never met the ones that she went on dates with, and I'm sure she dated, but she never brought other men into the house. She never said anything negative about my father. She made every effort she could to make sure that I connected with him. It was him that was doing all the rejection, not her.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Powerful. Just powerful information. Bishop Evans?
Yeah, I think that one of the ways I want to encourage the single mothers is that there's this concept that they don't have the capability to raise a son. When the three of us know, the four of us know, the five of us know that when a woman discovers she does have that ability, she will then discover how she needs help. And the help has to be someone she chooses, her father, if he's capable, an uncle, if they're capable. I think you have to give a man a spiritual center as a son. It's to start out knowing there's somebody greater than him. I think that the greatest disappointment that a lot of sons have is a mother establishing expectations that the father is not capable of.
Wow.
So that compounds the disappointment for the child. Another thing that I think that has to be brought out in our conversation today is that a lot of times mothers don't have the patience to wait for the child to discover the father, similar to what Bishop Anthony said. So in the midst of that transitional period, a lot of women fall into heavy criticism. But it's hard to criticize someone who your child is trying to love. So you run up against an emotional, almost like a fortress. And what the child does is, based on the criticism, begins to emotionally side with the father. The patience is necessary, because if the father's going to be consistent, the child will get a revelation. I remember sitting on the floor of our living room, and my mother said my father was coming. And she came back about a half an hour later and said, "Are you getting ready?" And I said, "No." She said, "Why not?" I said, "He's not coming." She never told me he wasn't coming. But when the last time she told me he was coming, a little twig broke inside me. Imperceptible, just a little snap. And I no longer had that expectation. But had she gone the other route, then we would have had an adversarial relationship around him. But she waited. And I know there were plenty of things she could say, because my dad fought my mother, and I stabbed my father to get him off when I was in third or fourth grade. And he told him if he used to come home drunk. So I told him if he did it again, I was going to kill him in his sleep. Now, this is 4 years old. But I got him off of her, and he never touched her again. It's probably why I'm so protective of females now. But I came up in that violent, alcoholic, substance-driven type of environment, and I just it impacted me. She didn't allow the negativity of the situation to impact me negatively for the rest of my life. And I think every mother is capable of that if she can pull herself out of herself, like Dr. Benny said, and start observing this thing from a 30,000-foot view. She can offer the advice, and she doesn't have to be a man to raise him. But she does have to have men at church or either in a family that can help supplement what she's not capable of doing. Because she can tell a guy how to be a man, but she can't show a boy how to be one. She can tell him, but she can't show him.
Well said. Well said. Mr. Derry?
I agree with everybody said so far, and I would just add that I think we need to be conscious as parents the way we communicate and the language we use around children. As a teacher, I'm around kids all day, and they're always paying attention, and they're always conscious of things that adults say. So I think sometimes intentionally or unintentionally, those thoughts can form opinions that can create a disassociation from the Father. So we just need to be conscious of the words that we use and the language that we use.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And we're going to dig a little deeper to the next question. One of the things that sticks with me so much is I always felt guilty for loving my father, even though he abandoned me.
Okay.
And I don't believe that people set out to make me feel that way, but I think they did it not intentionally by their body language when I had those conversations and by their responses. And so, going back to what Bishop Evans said, there are a lot of women out here who necessarily did not want to be the only parent in the situation, but they are by the circumstance. And so I think we can dig a little deeper and come from a perspective, because everyone has a unique story of why does your son still have a yearning to be with his father, love his father, knowing everything about his father, the disappointments, all of the times he didn't show up, all of the times that, there was a woman who stopped me and she said, Dr. Evans, I don't understand. She said he raised somebody else's family, but would not raise his own children. There are women out there who are hurt. They're extremely hurt about that. And so if we can give some mindset as men to why is there still a yearning to love this man, even though he has not done anything for me, or he might be raising somebody else's family and totally disregarded my mother and myself. Can we give some type of, and all the panelists doesn't have to answer this question, but can we give some type of insight to that?
Yeah, I've counseled a slew of people over the last 30 years concerning this subject. And I think a lot of times men, unfortunately, have a relationship with their children through the woman. And if the relationship with the woman breaks down, the relationship with the children breaks down.
Yeah.
That's just total irresponsibility. But it also is a way that men emotionally, psychologically distance themselves from their children. And then you see another family getting the benefit of a good father. One of the things that's missed in that context is that the man may be a different man now, but the sense of responsibility now should cause you to retrospect and say, I need to do something about my other responsibilities also. But a lot of men won't have that self-conversation to make that shift. I think it becomes important to understand that, there's this childlike expectation until we realize that nothing is wrong with our father. All right, hold on to the next part of this. What we realize is nothing's wrong with him, because when you say something's wrong with a person, you're implying it can be fixed. The realization is something's missing in my dad. So once you come to the revelation through a conversation, through reality, this is missing. What I'm expecting from my dad is missing, and it can't be fixed. Then all of a sudden the expectation starts to diminish and you can manage it. But unfortunately, the only way that happens is through disappointment. Now, from a spiritual point of view, I've got a problem with that process. But it's the process that really does convince you better than another individual can tell you. So the love doesn't, the desire for the love doesn't change. The desire for relationship is changed. It never goes away, but I think it shifts from I need it to I'm disappointed to I don't have it. And sometimes that takes a lifetime.
Yeah.
I totally agree. One of the big things that I realize about men, boys, we as boys, we want love. When we become men, we want respect. It kind of shifts. And when we're young men, we're boys, and we want that love, and we see other people who get that love from their parents or their father you know, who had, I knew I had a best friend named Ronnie Bird. His father was there. His parents had their stuff, but at least his father was there. And that's all I saw. And I wanted that love. And I knew about my father. My mother's, one of her great phrases was, kids don't stay kids forever. And she told my father that, I don't want any money from you. Fine, you want to pay child support? We don't need it. Your children need you. Mm-hmm. And so even at that point, we were looking, we're young, we want that love. But then as we get older, we realize that I want love, but I want you to respect me. I want you to show up. I want you to be there and do the things that you said that you're going to do. And when you don't do it, it's a form of you, especially as a young man growing up, you want that respect. Mm-hmm. Because your mother's already taught you to give it. So you don't stop loving, but you start expecting some respect or expecting something in return for what you want to give them. So with men, even now as a grown man, and most of us in relationships, we love our significant others, but we want respect from them as well. And that's how we come back with our love. As boys, we want that love from our parent, that father. Why do we still love him no matter what he's done? Is because that's what we're consistently looking for. Mm-hmm. But as often as he continues to disappoint us, we start understanding you're being disrespectful at that point also. So now that's when the shift changed. Our young men and our fathers need to try to catch them at that point, especially if you're around. And mothers, you know, you want to reach it. If you were telling, like my mother used to tell my father, come see him, because they're not going to stay children forever. Mm-hmm. And once they start realizing, and then especially as a man, you start wanting that respect, and you know, I don't want that disappointment. Mm-hmm. It's going to change. So I think it has a lot to do for young men. We love them. We want that love. But then as we get older, we want that respect. And we
absolutely
want to stop.
And I think you hit something so powerful, but it's a different topic for a different day. The fact that as young men or young boys, we want love that in many cases, young boys don't get. And then when they become adults, they are looking for respect that obviously they may not be getting, and they're demanding it at that time. And what happens to us? You know, there's so many of us walking around as grown men broken because nobody ever gave us that opportunity for love as boys. So we have felt that something is over in our life, the opportunity to receive genuine love, but then to get to a point where now I'm demanding respect. And so I'm acting out at any cost to get that respect. My son does not let me leave anywhere without coming up to me and saying, Dad, I love you, and giving me a hug before I leave out. He did it today. Before I left out that house, he said, Dad, I love you, and gave me a hug. He does not let me leave anywhere when he goes to school, wherever. I never received that growing up. But I was able to understand why it was important and put it in my son. And now when I'm telling you, I don't care where he is. He turns around, gives me a hug, say he loves me, and then he leaves. And so right then and there, he has given me something that was not able to be received when I was a young boy. Bishop Anthony, what do you have to say to that?
I wanted to piggyback off of what Bishop was saying as well. For me, I was looking for identity because I was with my father for about 5 years of my life. Mm-hmm. My father took me places. You know, some people say they were, well, he took me. I'll just say, I've been in bars.
Yeah.
I used to go to bars at the age of 5 years old. I've been with my father. That's where we spent most of our time, down on Lansdowne Avenue at Sonny's and all these other places. And that's where I bonded with my father in a negative place, but still it was a bond with my father. I felt like when my mother left, she had to leave. There was no way she could stay there because she was in danger, right? So, but I felt like he just stopped talking. And so for many years, I was trying to find out, who am I? You know what I mean? Who am I? And so that expectation started to turn into resentment. Now, for me, the issues that I lived with for many years was, I needed a father in my life, that father's voice. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit because Bishop Evans, when he first came into my life, he settled some things on the inside of my heart because I still dealt with different things, even as an adult. Even as an adult man, I was dealing with different things based on the relationship I did not have with my father. I really needed him back then, especially since I was a gifted athlete, had a lot of good things going on, went to college, didn't have any support from him at all. I mean, absolutely none. And then when I talked to him, when I had a chance to talk to him, he would say negative things to me. Now, when my father died, he died suddenly in the same week that my mother-in-law died. And I had just got finished preaching a message to my congregation about, getting to the people that you love. You need to, bring some restitution, reconciliation, so forth and so on. And he died a week afterwards without me getting a chance to see him. And I often wonder, well, God, I wanted to tell him that I loved him, I forgive him. I understand maybe some of the things you were dealing with because now I'm an adult now. I wanted to settle this thing in my heart. But I wasn't able to do that. And I asked God, why couldn't I see my father before he died? And for about 6 months, I didn't hear a word. And one day, I don't know where I was at, but I remember him saying this to me. I didn't let you see him because if he had said one more thing to you, it would have hurt you for the rest of your life. Because his words meant that much to me. So I went from looking for identity to resentment, trying to get something settled in my heart because I really, I didn't know who I was out there. I gravitated to whatever, old heads and whatnot. Some people say they were, they came up in the street. I came up in the street for real. I was around guys who if you got out of line, you might find your head over across the street somewhere. That's how I was raised. I understood. I was disciplined in the street. Now, my mother did the best she could. She walked me through a lot of things. But she, like Bishop was saying, she couldn't give me those things I needed. And I didn't have uncles and so forth and so on that were able to pour anything into me. So a lot of things got solved for me in the spiritual relationship with a spiritual father. It took place in my adulthood. That settled a lot of stuff for me where now identity is not the issue. Confidence was, when I was with my father, I had confidence. You know what I mean? At 5 years old, you felt confidence. You're with your father. I didn't know the bar was bad until I got older,
That's right. Right.
I didn't know it. You know what I mean? All I knew is I was with my dad. And my dad was, he was a certain kind of guy. He dressed very sharp. He was a magnificent man in the street anyway. But it went into resentment, and those things, caused a lot of problems for me in my teenage years, my college years. It wasn't until I got out of college, went into the rehab with all the drug addiction and all the other kind of stuff, and then met Bishop Evans that really some of this stuff was settled for me. So I understand that, that, watch this, I want respect, but I didn't know it was respect. For me, it was, I wanted to know who am I? What's the reason for my existence? And I was sure that my father had that for me, but he just, I don't think he could give it to me. He just didn't have it to give. So that's what happened for me.
Absolutely. And Bishop Evans, Bishop Anthony, what you just said was so powerful to the women in our lives out there. You said that I didn't know that the bar was a negative thing until I got older. But for me at that point in time, no matter what that looked like, it was an opportunity to spend time with my father, because when I was with my father, I felt extremely confident.
Sure enough.
And so, again, to that perspective of why there's a need to love your dad and want to be with your dad, is because it's something that no one else can give you. And so we appreciate that particular comment.
Dr. Evans, can I add something to that?
Sure.
I told you all about the violence that we had in the house, and my response to that violence was to attack my dad. Approximately, I'll say 40 years after that, my brother and I were walking down the street. And the point of this part of the conversation is to tell you how strong that emotion is.
Wow.
So my brother and I are walking down the street, and he finally asked me, why did mom leave dad? So I took him all the way back to what I could remember, took him all the way through the violence, took him all the way through the bringing women in the house, took her all the way through that. And his response was, do you think if she'd been stronger, she would have stayed?
Mm.
His desire to have my dad was stronger than his desire to protect my mother. And he was 35 or 40 years old at that point. So nothing
Mm-hmm.
could shatter the need for acceptance,
That's right.
even though it was illogical to me that he would think she should have stayed so he could have had him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we had some words on Walnut Street at 12 o'clock in the afternoon about that. You know, because it didn't make any sense to me. But I realized that me being 6 years older than him didn't mean that he had made the same emotional transition that I had made. Yeah.
Yes. Powerful. Powerful. Mr. Derry, you want to add something to our audience out there about, as an educator, but also as a son yourself, why is there such a need to love your father and to have that want for your dad, understanding that your situation was a little different?
Well, I like to talk from this perspective of a teacher. I agree with Bishop Anthony and what he said as far as I believe the kids are searching for identity, especially at an early age. I see kids yearn for a male's perspective or a male figure at an early age because a lot of times they may not have fathers at home that they see or they connect to on a day-to-day basis. So I have plenty of examples where I have students that called me dad just off this, I guess, out of the sense of a yearning for the man presence. I believe that kids want a presence, they want love, guidance, and stuff like that from a man. I believe that, especially young boys, as far as to go to the identity piece, it's kind of difficult when maybe raised by a woman, but you're a young boy yourself and you want to know what your other half is. You look in the mirror, you see a boy, but the rest of your family is females and stuff like that, and you're being raised by females. So I feel like that yearning is desire starts from an early age and it just grows and grows. And as Mr. Benny Ruth also said that I believe it transitions from a search from love to a search for respect as you get older, because sometimes that may be been a thing you may have been denied for so long that all you have left is respect, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, during this time, we want to open it up for some of those outstanding questions out there. And then we're going to bring our panel back and we're going to ask our panel one last contribution to give to our audience this evening. And so we're going to pull up our first question at this time because we promised our audience about giving them time to ask questions. And we understand that time is just not on our side. And this first question comes from Ava Wright, and it says, in your opinion, is there ever a situation where you should not facilitate the need for your son and his father?
Hey, I would definitely like to jump on that because this whole time as I was listening, I want to make sure that we understand. I was talking to before we came on. I was saying I had this shirt on and I worked out and it said respect. We have to show this love and respect for these mothers who are doing this thing and our mothers who did it.
Yeah.
And that question right there, they get in a protection mode. I know my mom did because she wanted to protect. Now, a lot of times we get in our mothers get in that protective role, making sure that not only that we don't bring other men into the house and protect us from, what we don't know. Sometimes they have to protect us what they do know. And they know that in some cases, this child does not need to meet this guy. Sometimes it's just that ugly. And then sometimes they have to realize that he does, but there's a process to it. And that's why I think everybody in that situation needed some counseling, whether it was from a pastor all the way to a therapist. But we have to realize that you have to be able to, you want to facilitate it, but sometimes
You can't.
you can't. You're
Yeah.
protecting that child from your son, from his father, because you know it's just that detrimental. But as long as it's not a personal thing between what happened between you and the father, the mother and the father, but you're doing it based on the protection of what you know that father is not going to add to him, you still have to facilitate that conversation and have that courageous conversation with your child so that he or she understands why it's not going to happen. And here are some of the reasons. Not being so negative, but definitely making sure they understand the danger, if you want to use that terminology, or just how explicit it could be if that connection happened. And sometimes they just get in protection mode and they have to protect their child.
Dr. Benny, I think that she also has to, when she emerges from the insanity of choosing him, she can be more managerial about the relationship with the son.
Amen.
But if she's still in the insanity of choosing, then it's hard for her not to be hostile. But once she comes out of that, she can start to manage that relationship. And sometimes, she wants the man to be different than he is, and then you do have to protect him. So Ava, sometimes you do.
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ava, for that great question. A lot of people had that question. Let's look at our next question. I believe that's a V. Moore. How can you honor a parent that mistreats you? Wow. That's a question even as an adult. How can you honor a parent that mistreat you? Any of our panelists want to tackle that question?
Yeah. Honor is not about, to a parent, is honoring the title and not necessarily the behavior. But also, a lot of times when parents and children are attempting to reunite, the parent makes the mistake of trying to have a parent-child relationship with the adult, when the relationship has to start with a adult relationship, and see do parental aspects grow out of that. So I think there are times when you have to honor what can be honored, and put boundaries around what cannot be honored. And
Absolutely.
I think that's appropriate.
And I think sometimes when we feel that when we honor our parents that have, we feel there was some level of mistreatment, that means that we can't have courageous conversation. That means that we can't talk about how we feel. And in so many cases, I hear so many people, our brothers and our sisters, saying, just move on. But it sounds good, but you have to deal with that area. I'm not saying to stay on and hover there, but you can still honor your parent, even though you feel that you have been mistreated. And I was having a conversation today with someone, there is a time, and I think Bishop Anthony said it so well, there's a time when it is too late, right? There's a time when it is too late to have any level of honor. And so when you honor your parent, it does not mean you cannot have those deep conversations. That doesn't mean that everything is okay. It means that I respect myself enough to honor you for who you are, the title of you as a parent. And I'm going to pull whatever positivity out of this relationship that I can, understanding what you're bringing to the table with that.
Alfonso, something just dropped in my spirit. Not only is your son, he's a gift to you from God. And I say this, a man gets healed from what he lacked from his father, from his mother, by becoming what he lacked.
Yes.
And what God has done for you is given you a son that's providing you with something you didn't receive. So he's illustrating the dynamic was important to you. So I'm not trying to make you get choked up or nothing, but
Yeah.
the
That's
reality
what's
is
happening.
reality is we get healed of what we lacked by becoming that to someone else.
Yes. That's so well said. We're going to have to write that one down and sell that one too, Bishop. That was awesome. All right, let's look at our next audience question. Robin D. Johnson.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, wow. Okay. My father never wanted me.
That's one of our members.
Okay. My father never wanted me, no relationship. Why would a man do that to their daughter? It hurt me for a while. Anybody want to tackle that? That's kind of similar to the other question, but anybody want to tackle that?
I think sometimes there is something about themselves they can't face. Men, we don't do well with the confrontation we have to deal with ourselves, looking at ourselves in the mirror. Oftentimes we don't realize something is wrong until somebody else brings it up to us. And then even then it takes some time and process for us to be able to say, that is me. You know what I mean? So really, for her, I understand how bad it hurts because I felt that same pain, but I realized it was something that was wrong with him, which is towards the end is, I realized, let me tell this guy I love him because I didn't want to walk around with this resentment, but I realized it was something that he couldn't face himself. There was something about himself he was unhappy with, something about his life that he couldn't quite put a finger on it or whatever it was. It was something that he dealt with. Something he dealt with. And it was just, you would think it's you. So you start to take on the guilt or you start to take on the blame. What's wrong with me? But really, there's something wrong in him that he doesn't want to meet his child or he doesn't want to spend time with his child. So there's really something going on with him. That's the real issue there. So how do you deal with that? Listen, time and pain are two things that will go hand in hand. After a while, just like when somebody dies in your family, Bishop has taught us over and over again, you have to manage life a little bit differently. You know what I mean? So you're not used to not having that person around. So the same thing with a person who doesn't want to be in your life that you've never met, someone that doesn't want to connect with you, they're like dead to you. So you have to, even though you've never experienced them, you still have to, through time, you'll be able to manage that thing over time.
Absolutely. Great advice. Let's pull up our next question. We're going to have two more questions. Okay, this question is from Annette McGee.
Antoine
McGee. Okay. Sorry, these glasses are having a problem today.
Clean them. Clean them.
I am in the position now where my father is reaching out to me for a relationship. It says he only wants to connect to me because of who I am now. Any advice on how to have the conversation? Wow, that's a great question, Antoine. Great question.
Go ahead, Bernie.
Well, I would just say set boundaries. I mean, you know who you are.
Adult.
You're an adult. You set the boundaries. If you want to meet your father, meet him, but set the boundaries because you only going to give as much as you're going to give. You only going to let him take as much as he could take. You are in control. You're not, 7 years old. Who you are today is who you are. So now execute exactly who you are by setting those boundaries and making sure that it's a blessing to meet your father. I'm gonna tell you, I did it with my father the last 5 months of his life, and it was a blessing. It was, and then you have to ask yourself, you have to then also check yourself because there's a level of forgiveness that you have to understand, and you have to understand that your forgiveness, you're not forgiving him for him, you're forgiving him for you.
That's right.
So that you can move forward.
Yeah, man.
Then execute exactly what you want and need, and you'll be surprised what could come out of it once you do that.
Absolutely. That was good advice. We're going to take our last question. Thank you so much for that question. All right. We have What's wrong on my screen? That identity crisis is so real. Is it possible for the child to resent, blame the parent in their life because of the other's parent's absence? In my case, daughter and absent father. Anybody
Yeah,
want to tackle that, BB?
I think it's possible, but it may not be
Mm-hmm.
rational.
Okay.
There is a lot to be said when one parent is consistent and present,
Mm-hmm.
and the other parent is consistently absent.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
There's a lot. There's a huge statement that that a lot of children have a hard time emotionally overcoming that barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So they begin to almost resent the one they're with because life with the other parent doesn't look so structured, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
look so demanding,
Yeah.
doesn't look so all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
once again, it usually takes the child time to grow into an
Yes.
adult and start having adult perceptions
Mm-hmm.
before they realize what they had in the
Mm-hmm.
parent that stayed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we see that so much when the child lives with one parent for a period of time, and then when they become preteens, all of a sudden
Hmm.
they want to move with the other parent.
Yeah.
And we see that all the time until they get over there and realize, okay, I need to go back to some level of structure and identity for what I need in my life. So
And
that was an awesome response.
that perception is usually created by an uncooperative relationship between the
Hmm.
parents as to how the children still have to be raised.
Yes. Yes.
And some I've seen adults, males or females, try to win popularity by liberality.
Mm. Yes. Dangerous.
Very
Hmm.
dangerous.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. That's so powerful because if one thing that we want to say to our mothers out there and who have said to us is that it is dangerous to compete through your children or to get your perspective across, to use them as a pawn in that particular process because they can't navigate it, especially the younger ones. And as an educator, we see that so much where the children are torn because the parents are having this strife and using them based upon that, or your father is not this, or your mother is not this, or she did that, and did she, he did that, and vice versa. So it's extremely important that we understand that leads to an identity crisis.
Hmm.
So thank you very much, Bishop. And so we're going to have time for one more question, but before we take that question, I'm going to ask all the panelists to be thinking about this is our panel discussion about the women in our lives, and so grateful that we are that we've had these women in our lives when we've dealt with different areas of relationship with our fathers or lack thereof. And so I want you to do a 30-second or less tribute to that particular woman or women in your life when we end our panel discussion for the evening, because there's a piece that you're going to see in the book, Taking the Risk, Meet Your Father, where every man writes a letter to their father. And so I think it would be great this evening to end on a note that every man on this panel gives a tribute to that woman that was in their life that helped them navigate the relationship with their father, or help to bridge it, or just help to support it. So we're going to take our last question at this time. Portia Kendall says, children, the glory of the Father in the book of Psalms. My stepdad said it would behoove me to find him his words exact, but I feel why now? Anybody want to tackle that?
I'm not sure I understand it.
She's saying that children are the glory of the Father in the book of Psalms, and her stepdad is saying that it would behoove me to find him, meaning, I guess, find her father. And
Okay.
she is saying, why now?
I think that's a reasonable question, Portia, especially if you've gotten to the place where you are settled with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the problem with meeting an adult that you really don't know is fighting the preconceived notions as to how you want the meeting to go.
Mm-hmm.
We all have an idea of what we would like to happen. So we have to be prepared for the opposite so
Mm-hmm.
we can be surprised by something positive that happens. But
Yeah.
most children go into that situation, watch this, with a childlike perception of how the conversation should turn out.
Mm-hmm.
That means it's all going to be strawberries and roses and Kool-Aid, but it's normally not that unbalanced.
Mm-hmm.
Because you get to see the adult version. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be long. There are some things you will understand intellectually that you will never understand emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to know that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's just some stuff that never will make sense because it shouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Intellectually, you'll get it, but
Mm-hmm.
emotionally, you won't because it should
Mm-hmm.
have never happened the way it went down. So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be ready for things that make intellectual sense and things that may not make emotional sense ever in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to end on that note. To all of the women who have joined us every month, we appreciate all of your insight. And we wanted to dedicate a panel discussion to you this evening because we know that you are critical in this movement, in this healing process. And so I will start my dedication by saying, to my grandmother who is deceased now, and to my aunt Felicia, to my mother, to my aunts. I want to thank them for making sure that I had great relationships with other men, inclusive of my grandfather, even though my father was still not in my life or has never been in my life. And so I know that they were the bridge that kept it together for me to have other great relationships with other men. All right, Mr. Ruth.
I would just, wow, this is emotional. My mom is just, I'll start off with just saying thank you for everything, for every everything I got, everything that I thought was negative that turned out positive, everything that she said.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I said, I want to hang out on the corner with my friends. She said, okay, no
Mm-hmm.
problem. I'll go with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she said, because if my son could go hang out on the block, it should be good enough for me to do so. And I realized that it wasn't. It was just those things that she used to just tell my sister and I, and tell me, especially as a male, that just honor her. When she went out to learn, when she wanted to teach something, she went out and she talked to the men in the church to teach me how to tie a towel or change the oil. She
Mm.
had them teach her so that she still could come and show me. I
Mm.
honor her for taking that route instead of just allowing anybody to show me. She wanted to be that one. But also the fact that she never stopped loving me. She never stopped loving me at all. She loved me through my good, my bad, and my indifference. And she loves me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on what she taught me and how she kept me in church and how she kept me going even when I wanted to stop. So I just honor her, and I want to, my tribute to her is living my best life for her and knowing that I can be her. The way she taught me and the way she raised me allowed me to meet my father where he was and understand forgiveness at that point. So I honor her.
Thank you. Thank you. Bishop Anthony.
My tribute to my mother would be I want to thank her for her love. Her love was so rich that in every circumstance that I ever experienced, she was always the first one to stand up for me. When the times I knew I had let her down, she still stood by me. Everything that she did was to help, was trying to mold me to become the man that she knew I could become.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite stories was when I went to Hargrave Military Academy in ninth grade, and I had experienced some racial stuff up there. It was about 600 guys, only about 7 to 8 black people up there, black kids up there. and they had called me the N-word. It was about 8 of them. I was absolutely terrified. I didn't say anything. So she came to get me at Christmas time, took me home, and on the ride home, I told her, I said, listen, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. They called me the N-word, this, that, and the third. She said, all right, when after break, we'll go back and get your stuff. So we got back to the school.
You already know where this is going.
Funny, Bishop Evans. We got back to the school. Listen, I think, Timothy, Paul tells Timothy, I heard about the faith that was in your mother and your grandmother. I've never heard my mother speak in tongues, but I've seen her faith.
Yeah.
From 902 East Gorgas Lane to 6008 Nassau to 226 Nassau to every place we move, I've seen her faith. So bravery and faith is something that she has always illustrated in front of me. We got back to that school. She said, go ahead up and go get your stuff. I'm going to sign you out. I looked back and she pulled off. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. So I had to wait until she got home. And, I'm asking her, what did you just do to me? But she explained to me that if you start quitting every time you reach a difficult situation, you'll quit every time you face something.
That's right.
So my tribute to her too, and I say it all the time, to the greatest man I've ever met, to the greatest man in my life, my mother. I give her a tribute. Look at what I've become because of her.
Powerful tributes. Mr. Derry.
I have a kind of extensive list, but I would like to thank my mom, my grandma, my godmother, my aunts, my older cousins, and my adopted mother, Tamika. I want to thank them for, most importantly, praying for me when I didn't pray for myself and not giving up on me. I want to thank them for their hard work and their patience, their dedication, for being leaders and role models at all times, their sacrifice for me, and just instilling morals and valuable lessons into me and the importance of education. So I want to thank them all for that. This truly played an important role in my life. They are all very near and dear to my heart, and I just want to thank them again.
Awesome. Bishop Evans.
Yeah, I everything that everyone has said, I experienced also, but I literally thank her for teaching me everything that was vital for me to learn in life. Seek after God, how to take care of myself, how to function on the job, how to pursue a career, the importance of education, the importance of a balanced life, sports, social, choosing the correct friends. I mean, I always realized how much she had contributed, but when she died, I realized even more. Because what I miss is her wisdom in every situation. I don't know about these guys, but the older I got, the smarter she got. Because when I was 16, I thought she was insane. Now that I'm almost 70, she was a genius because she never gave me bad advice. In all those years, she never steered me the wrong way. So so I guess what I'm talking about is her consistency. My grandmother, her and my aunt, their consistency is what has inspired me to be able to be consistent and committed to things.
Absolutely. We want to thank no other than Bishop Anthony. We want to thank Mr. Ruth. We want to thank Mr. Derry and also Bishop Evans on this evening for awesome opportunities for conversation. We want to thank our audience, our male and our female audience. And again, we wanted to dedicate this panel discussion to all of the women that play a significant role in the relationships that fathers and sons have. And we understand the role, we understand the sacrifice that has come along with that role. And we are truly grateful on this evening for all of your questions and the fact that these panel discussions have enriched your life because they definitely have enriched ours. We ask that you look out for a conference that is taking place in September, our final release of the book. We're just excited about what the possibilities are in the future. We want to thank all of our panelists tonight. To the IT team at Bethany, we want to thank you again for all of the awesome work that you continuously do. And we want to say good evening to you. Remember, that it is important for you to take the risks as you meet your Father. Have a great evening.